day of testing wrapped up in Bahrain, and it's been quite the interesting test. We definitely have a lot more to go off of when you compare it to Barcelona, where we had no information. We got to see the cars even if it was a total of 3 hours. But we got so much information from the media, pictures, and in general the drivers giving these interviews. That's given us a lot of feedback and in general data to go off of. The live timing has helped a lot as well. I bet a lot of you were watching that during the hours that the Formula One cars weren't on track. At least you can see the little dots go around, see the sector times. But let's go over everything we've kind of picked up from this week in Bahrain. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. Support's been tremendous. Thank you all so much. Now, of course, the first talking point I want to get into is the whole Formula E on steroids comparison that Max Verstappen has given. But multiple other drivers have came out and really given their piece. George Russell was the newest of the three to come out and say something about these cars. And I say three being Russell, Lando, and Max. But many more have given their opinion, Lewis being one of them, and Alonso's given his opinion as well. Both of them kind of saying it's a bit robotic, the driving style, but Russell is not part of that crew. He's kind of on that Lando train saying, well, it feels like a Formula One car. The Mercedes is a Formula One car, kind of hinting at that the Red Bull isn't, trying to give out some jabs, per usual. In George Russell's statements, he mainly talks about it being lighter and smaller, which is everything we do like. It's that the engine is very weird and the drivers have to play around with it. Now, in my opinion, I think every single time we make these regulation changes, the drivers come out and hate the rags, hate the way that the cars perform. We're only 4 races in, which is something that George even highlights. I think this is definitely something that's very important to note. These cars are basic. There's not really much done to them. Over time, they will become better cars to drive in both qualifying and the race when they figure out how to really recover that battery better. So, it's very hard to judge cars based off of 4 days. Yes, they've been in the simulator for a long time, they've driven them, but these are still very new cars, and I think if we get at a good race like we did in 2022 in Bahrain, where every driver pretty much changed their opinion because of how fun that race was, that we'll see the same type of opinion come around. I don't like that they have to lift off going into certain corners, but maybe our opinion will change if the racing is close and everything else is fun to watch. That's the most important part. I don't really care if the car is going to fly 5 seconds faster than the previous year, but George and Lando are kind of on that feeling that they do like the way the cars feel. They like the way that they can mess around with them. Max against it, Lewis against it, Fernando. Most of the main head guys are against it. There will be a lot of upgrades for the next week in Bahrain. Mercedes already talked about it. Apparently, not too many big pieces, but a few pieces that will be bolted onto the car to only enhance what is already a very strong car. We know Ferrari's pretty much getting their B spec and then an additional upgrade in Australia. So, a lot to look forward to if you are a Ferrari fan who's been getting slow upgrades throughout the week. Anyways, Ferrari's in a good spot. Very, very good spot. We're going to continue with them later on in the video. Now, Red Bull has said they're bringing their Race 1 package to the next Bahrain test, and this will be big. A lot of people are talking about that side pod being very bulky when you compare it to the other top teams that have undercuts and have done that side pod area much differently. Red Bull looks like a great car, but it would not shock me if they cut out that bottom piece completely. Now, We'll have to see what that ends up doing to the cooling race 1 package next week in Bahrain. We know Aston Martin's going to upgrade a lot of their car. They're definitely going to need it considering how it's been going this week. And there will be others, of course, bringing big upgrades. We didn't see as many as we thought we would during this first week. Now, something more on the Aston Martin problems. Pedro de Rosa, a big ambassador over there for the team, said, "I know it might not sound convincing, but believe me, sitting there and listening to those comments from Adrian Newey was very inspiring for us. Before there were many opinions. Now nobody challenges NetEWI. We have this huge amount of resources working in a single direction. They're obviously struggling. The car isn't in the most optimal spot, but it's definitely the engine that seems to be the issue when it comes to the gearbox. Downshifting the car is very difficult. Turn 10 in itself has been so hard for the AS drivers. There are multiple reports of them locking up 4 or 5 times in a row going into that corner, whether that be front or rear locking, and the drivers just being completely unhappy with the stability in the car and the balance in general. So, it seems to be an engine issue. The team is confident that they can make huge steps come Australia. I've even seen reports that it's getting a little over-glorified how bad they are, and they're actually doing a little bit better. But I mean, if we just look at what's happening in the test as of right now, their RPMs are low, shifting is a bit odd in comparison to others. The acceleration, they're a team on the back foot, but they still have till the first to really get that engine up to date before it gets solidified till the 6th or 7th race. So just a little bit more on those Aston problems. Now, driving styles in this regulation period are going to be super important, and we've already seen that through testing. I think drivers that are going to thrive completely under this rag as of right now is going to be Max, Lando, Charles, Lewis, Russell, and Antonelli. Just talking about the main 4, I think Pastra is going to have a little bit of a tough time. These cars are very low grip, as some have even explained it. It's pretty much like driving a Monza-style car everywhere. I didn't really bring up Isaac because he's new, but I think Isaac can have a good time. His driving style really correlates with this low-grip style. The drivers that like oversteer, they're really going to enjoy these cars. They're small. The way that they snap is really interesting. That's going to play a big factor in the season, and that's where the drivers can make a big difference. Yes, the wheel is going to be complicated in the start, I believe, for them. I think they're going to get used to it very quickly. They don't like the change now, but I do believe that these drivers are going to adapt very fast, and by the time it comes to Australia, most of them will be up to date with how the wheel has changed and how they need to drive these cars, and they'll be very quick. So, I'm definitely going to analyze the driving styles a lot this year to see who's really thriving. We've already seen the whole downshifting into turn 10, pretty much getting into first gear, and I think we're going to see that change a lot in a lot of different corners throughout the season. But just to highlight those 6 drivers, I really think that their driving styles go really well with this new rake period. And I only highlighted the top 4 teams. I could mention others, and I probably will in another video. And I do think even with Ferrari having to pull over at the very end, Lewis Hamilton doing 150 laps in the last day in Bahrain. They kept their engine from Spain and used it in this test session. Was pretty much bulletproof till the very end. But as we can see, the EOS car ran so many laps. And I do think the reliability on this engine is definitely something to appreciate with Ferrari. And it's a pretty big deal because in these tests, that's where it is most important. And I do think they've used these tests to maximum capacity. Like I said, pulling over like this, yeah, it did happen. But I don't think it's the biggest deal considering how good of a test Ferraris had, and especially the reliability on a pretty strong engine that added. And I do think we've gotten a little bit of a more true pecking order for this test in general. I'm going to make a separate video ranking the teams based off of this test, and then going into the next one, probably comparing the two. But just for now, to give you a little hint, I think there's 3 bottom teams as of right now, 4 midfield teams, and then a top 4. You can probably guess the 4 that are at the top. But we definitely have a much better idea of where the teams stand after this test. That's given us a much better result than that of Barcelona, where the cars were never pushing. There's been some push laps here. I still think we're missing a lot of upgrades, which will play a crucial part in what we see in Australia's pecking order, and a lot of teams can still turn it around by the time we get to that first race. So, it's not the official pecking order, but a better idea definitely. That's going to do it for this Bahrain testing weekend. Like I said, I'm going to have another video on the weekend in general, ranking the teams, but leave your thoughts down in the comments below. What you guys end up picking out of this week. Did you guys enjoy this whole 1-hour format? I definitely think it needs to be longer. Maybe not the full 8 hours, but 4 hours would have been nice. At least the whole afternoon session. Leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world. And peace.